Man, don't you love this time of year? Fall camp is in full swing and it's crucial to know your roster from top to bottom. In part 1, let's deep dive into the offense, position by position, player by player. Paul Wadlington, football analyst at Inside Texas, is back with the 11th annual Burnt Orange Bible. The 2023 Longhorn Football Prospectus, Thinking Texas Football, is your indispensable preview for the Texas Longhorns, our opponents, and the Big 12 Conference. It's insightful, it's hilarious, and it puts surface-level Longhorn analysis to shame. Thinking Texas Football is out now, and you can pick it up in paperback on Amazon or get the ebook on Apple or Smashwords. Be the smartest fan in the room and start thinking Texas football today. Links to all purchase options are in the description below. And after you buy Paul's book, head over to Inside Texas to read his weekly writings throughout the season so you never miss out on any quality Longhorn content. Make sure to subscribe at InsideTexas.com today. Link in the description. All right, now that you know where you need to spend your hard-earned money, let's avoid all the fall camp narratives and conjecture so we can get an objective feel for all the personnel on the offensive side of the ball. Without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome back, Paul, and let's get right into quarterback. Quinn Ewers showed what he could do when operating with confidence, but the season on average was shaky. Besides cutting his hair and getting into shape, what exactly does Ewers need to improve to translate his NFL arm ability into Texas wins?
Quinn Ewers was consistently inconsistent in 2022. And for Texas to improve, Quinn Ewers is going to have to level up. And there's a few ways he can do that. He's already done a few of the things that he needs to do to get that done. One, he's gotten in better shape. He lost some weight. He's had his first real offseason strength and conditioning program. He's moving better. He's looking more agile and more dexterous in the pocket. That's important. Two, he's getting a better familiarity with the traditional passing game and the play action passing game that Steve Sarkisian emphasizes. You know, a lot of people are grading Quinn Ewers as if he was a seasoned college quarterback. Effectively, he was a true freshman starting quarterback. And that's typically death for most college quarterbacks in all of history. And Quinn Ewers was no different. If people view that time at Ohio State and Columbus, when he should have been a senior at South Lake Carroll, as useful, then I guess we think, someone watching the Houston Astros and having a season tickets is it capable of playing second base? Quinn Ewers was not getting quality reps either in practice or in games. And so when he came to Texas, he was effectively a novice. The one thing that he absolutely needs to do is find a base platform that he can throw from. Ewers needs to develop a core foundational throwing motion that he can improvise off of rather than making the improvisation itself his foundation. And I think he needs to learn to basically make throws on time and make the simple throw and develop a nice core foundational principle that he can rely on under pressure or when he has to move in the pocket, rather than trying to make every ball a Patrick Mahomes miracle ball. In terms of statistics, he was up and down. He had 132 passer efficiency rating. He only completed 58% of his passes. The majority of that came in 2 games where he really struggled. That was against Oklahoma State. He was 19 of 49. That's just over 38%, which is no good. Threw 3 picks in that game. And then TCU, he's 17 of 39 with 1 interception. Overall, he actually did a pretty decent job, other than those 2 games, of taking care of the ball. He only threw interceptions on about 2% of his passing attempts, which is about where you want to be as a quarterback. And then he did have a bad strip sack fumble against Baylor late in the season. But other than that, he did a pretty good job taking care of the ball with less than stellar pass protection and a limited wide receiver core in terms of numbers and volume. He also completed 7.4 yards pass per attempt. That's a little low from what Steve Sarkisian and this Texas Longhorn offense wants. You're going to look for Ewers to at least add about a yard per passing attempt. That's one gauge that you can tell if he's being efficient. The other is simply touchdown to interception ratio. He was 15-6 last year. That's a 2.5 to 1 ratio. Not bad. I think he's fully capable of 4 to 1, given the various weapons that he has around him. All in all, I expect Quinn Ewers to take a massive step up as Texas gets more diverse in their personnel, as the receiver room dramatically improves, as the offensive line gets more cohesive and he gets better protection. And then, of course, his own individual improvements in terms of his arm, in terms of accuracy, in terms of his understanding, and, of course, being in great shape.
What do you think Sark can do schematically to help him out and increase that likelihood of success? Is that adding more spread concepts that he was accustomed to growing up as a Texas high school quarterback?
We'll touch upon this more as we get to the tight end section as well, but that's a great question. You're going to see Texas go to a lot more 11 personnel, 11 meaning 3 wide receivers, 1 running back. And I think that's going to be much more in line with Quinn Ewers' high school spread DNA that he grew up with, as almost all Texas high school quarterbacks now grow up with. He is not as comfortable, or was not as comfortable last year, in sort of a traditional, more NFL play action passing game. I think he's more comfortable with the spread field, with the defense more declared pre-snap in terms of coverage. And then also, I think it gives him the opportunity to find playmakers in space. And that's what he's great at doing. The other thing that Steve Sarkisian did, quite frankly, to help him is he went to the portal and he went and got A.D. Mitchell. And of course, the year before, he got Isaiah Nayor. We didn't get to see Isaiah Nayor. We'll talk about him more later. But the Longhorn passing and pass receiving options have grown considerably, not just in terms of the portal, but also the recruiting trail. And then, of course, you have a healthy Xavier Worthy and the ever reliable Jordan Whittington.
100%. And then we have the 2 challengers in the quarterback room, one further along than the other. First off, we have Malik Murphy with his spring game showing, demonstrating that insane, powerful arm and his command in the pocket. What security does he provide this year if Quinn were to go down?
Well, if you're just a casual Texas Longhorn football fan and you went to the spring game, you were probably confused as to why there was a defensive end taking quarterback snaps. But that wasn't a defensive end. That was Malik Murphy, all 6'5", 240 pounds of him. And in fact, he looks even bigger than that on the field. He is a big, strong passer. And he showed what has been tantalizing Steve Sarkisian for a couple of years, why he brought him along. And he showed a huge arm and he showed a real pocket presence. He was 9 of 13 for 165 yards passing in that spring game. And that was with 2 drops. And of course, he connected on a couple of dimes. One of them was a drop. One of them was a touchdown to Jonte Cook. But even more impressive than that were some of his intermediate throws on the roll. He is just a big, strong pocket passer. He's got a live arm. He's accurate. He's fearless. He's got a natural leadership and charisma about him. And finally, I really feel bad for any nickel blitzer that comes off the edge at 180 pounds and is tasked with bringing Malik Murphy down to the ground. I don't think it's going to work out very well for them. The beauty of this is Texas now has an insurance policy. They've got a tremendous floor in the quarterback room, irrespective of Quinn Ewers. And I think they've got an exciting, bright future with multiple high-level quarterbacks.
For sure. And were you able to glean anything of Arch Manning's spring game? Because we know Sark definitely gave him all the weapons he needed to succeed there.
Yeah, well, what we know about Arch Manning is that he's game. He went out there, and Sark didn't try to load or have ringers out there on offense with him. He was behind a 3rd-team offensive line, throwing to 3rd-team receivers and walk-ons, and it looked like it. I love that people have already pronounced Arch Manning a bust based on that performance when he should be doing like the car wash drive at Isidore Newman High School right now. I think Arch Manning is going to be a very good quarterback for Texas. And I think the thing that's intriguing about him is not only does he have the football IQ that the Mannings are known for, but he inherited granddad's athleticism, the athleticism that bypassed Eli and Peyton and apparently went straight to Arch. Arch isn't a running quarterback, but he is very capable as an athlete. He's got good legs. He's a big, strong kid. When he plays, he's going to be all of 6'4", 225 plus. And I think he's going to bring a lot of acumen, a lot of study, and a lot of sophistication to that passing game.
I agree. And then running back is going to be a fun one with the relative uncertainty of how the depth chart will end up by the end of the year. Let's hit them all, starting with Brooks. What can you make of this unclear yet intriguing room?
Yeah, there's a lack of clarity, but a lot of excitement in the running back room. Texas, of course, lost a top 10 NFL draft pick in superstar Bijan Robinson, and then a 3rd-round NFL draft pick and great team leader in Roschon Johnson. The coaching staff doesn't think that they're going to replace these guys in terms of on-field ability, but they think that the guys that they have vying for the starting job and for contributing roles are more than capable. Let's talk about some of the candidates. First, we have Jonathan Brooks. Brooks is a really interesting player because he's got kind of a bewitching running style. He's a slasher and a glider. And typically you don't see those two things in combination. And he's one of these guys that when you're watching him from the sideline, the first time you see him, you wonder if he's even trying. And then you notice that he's pulling away from all the defenders and they can't get a grasp on him. And he just seems to be sort of slowly roller skating down the field and gaining separation. He's a really interesting player. He has been beset by some nagging injuries during his time at Texas, but in the game action we have seen, he's rushed for 340 yards in his career at over 6 yards a carry. He's also proven to be a capable pass catcher. He's also a capable pass protector, which is a huge aspect of getting snaps in this offense. If you can't protect Quinn Ewers, you're not going to get out there on the field. And I think Jonathan Brooks obviously is going to be the starter because he's got the myriad attributes that marry and really allow Texas to be the most diverse on offense when he's out on the field. The big question is he a bell cow? Is he a 20 carry per game running back? We don't know. Steve Sarkisian doesn't know. You know what? Jonathan Brooks may not know until you get out there in live action under fire. The good news is there's a lot of depth behind him, and there's some very capable players. The next guy, of course, is Keelan Robinson. Keelan Robinson is a standout special teams player, and he's going to be out there 30-plus snaps a game, whether he even gets out there for a single snap at running back, because he's that important to that unit. However, he's also a pretty capable running back. He has rushed for 408 yards over his last two years in Texas. And last year, he actually evolved a little bit. He caught 20 balls for 219 yards and 3 touchdowns. And that is a career high by a substantial margin for Keelan. And Keelan showed considerably better hands. He's not going to get moved to slot receiver, which is the dream of a certain contingent of the Longhorn fan base. But what he is going to do is be a pretty threatening guy out of the backfield. And I expect him to match that pass catch total. And I expect him to be a pretty significant contributor as a third down back. Next, we've got CJ Baxter. Talk about bewitching potential. He is a raw Florida athlete. And you say that knowing that he was ranked the number 1 running back recruit in the nation. Tashard Choice out there doing work yet again. He finds his guys and he reels them in. And CJ Baxter is going to be a very good player in Texas. He did show up around 210 pounds. He's already gained about 10 pounds of good weight in the offseason. He's around 220 or just under 220. He'll play his best football at Texas between 225 and 230. He is a very powerful, I think, very savvy running back. He's just a natural runner. And I think that's one of the most underrated aspects of his game. Also, for being a big back, he has a real knack for dropping long runs. He just has that acceleration. He has that sense of burst despite his size. And of course, as with all young freshman running backs with a little bit of power who are tall, he's going to learn about low pad levels. Tashard Choice is already teaching him, but college linebackers will also teach him if Tashard's teaching doesn't take. I expect CJ Baxter to be a major factor later in the season. Probably starting in October, you're going to see him get more and more reps as he gets more and more comfortable in the rotation. Probably not the guy you want to trot out there on 3rd and 9 in Tuscaloosa in a key game situation. You got to give him a little bit of an opportunity to get acclimated to the college game. But CJ Baxter, the future is bright. Then you got a couple of primary colors. I'm talking about blue and red. That's Jaden Blue and Savion Red. Jaden Blue, speaking of great hands, is a very capable pass receiver. He's about 190 pounds. And one thing that I did notice from the spring game, and I think this was an order or a commandment from Tashard Choice, and that is he wanted to see Jaden Blue run between the tackles and not try to bounce it outside. And that's exactly what Jaden Blue did. He put his head down and he ran it between the tackles in the spring game and showed that he was capable of picking up some of the hard yards and not just always fighting and trying to break the big run. So that's an important part of his development. Probably less capable as a pass protector. So that may limit some of his snaps in situations. And then we come to Savion Red, the other primary color. Savion is a converted wide receiver. So hands and ability to catch are not in question. He also, interestingly, has a big lower body. I mean, he's a 5'10", 215-pound running back and a very capable short yardage runner. He actually has a lot of natural power, which is kind of interesting. That said, Red is going to help himself by being a little bit more attentive off the field and getting a little bit more in his playbook. And that's what's going to give the coaches the confidence to play him more. Right now, I see him on the outside looking in, irrespective of his talent level.
That's going to be a room to watch during camp. And as we briefly touched on with Quinn earlier, we have some weapons at wide receiver this year. I see it as four main guys and then the field. The main starters to me are Worthy, Mitchell, Whittington, and Nayer. So in this leading group of guys, what's your analysis?
Well, there's probably no unit that improved themselves more this offseason and with returning starters than the Texas Longhorn wide receiver core. This is going to be a top 10 national group. The question is, can they be a top 3 national group? And I tell you what, if they have good health and they develop the way a lot of people anticipate they will, that is not an outlandish statement. Quinn Ewers is about to have an embarrassment of riches to throw the ball to. And a lot of Big 12 defenses, well, they're going to get a little bit tight when they line up across the Longhorns. Let's talk about the headliner. That's Xavier Worthy. Worthy actually had a sophomore slump. Part of that was he was thrust into a role to which he was not accustomed as a deep threat. Instead of that movement, sort of classic Z receiver, which Worthy is, he's going to have that opportunity to go back to that role because of who Texas brought in and brought back. He caught 60 balls for 760 yards and 9 touchdowns last year. Over 2 years, he's caught 21 touchdowns. So even when Ewers and Worthy weren't always connecting, they were still a pretty deadly combination last year. And Worthy proved that in the goal line, despite being a smaller receiver, he is capable of running a jerk route that can absolutely humiliate and embarrass a college corner. And that's not going to change. Of course, Worthy did break his hand, and that did affect some of his ability. He also struggled a little bit on tracking balls and running correct routes or generally just connecting with Ewers. That is going to improve not only with time, healing, and also the new offensive structure in which Worthy's going to be back in his traditional role. There was probably no receiver in the Big 12 who was more feared one-on-one, faced off on a DB with the ball in his hands in space than Xavier Worthy. And I think Texas fans are going to see a big, big junior year. He's going to go off to the NFL and be a high draft pick. Next, A.D. Mitchell. Probably the guy who's going to be most transformative to this wide receiver core is A.D. Mitchell. The big wide receiver from Georgia he's a Texas native who went to Georgia, grew 2 inches while he was on campus, got even more athletic, got even faster. And he went from sort of a 3-star developmental guy to being probably the number 1 receiver on their team had he returned to Georgia. But he did transfer to Texas, much to our good fortune. And he's about 6'4", 195 pounds. The thing that's so intriguing about A.D. Mitchell is his magical power is that he can maintain his stride running full speed while he fully rotates his upper body and plucks the ball out of the air. So even if you have him covered, he's not really covered, partly because he's 6'4" with long arms, but also because he can move and manipulate his body in ways while running full speed that no other receiver really can. And it's a kind of an interesting, subtle gift. And I think the Texas offense is going to exploit it fully. He is going to be the starting X receiver. And of course, the only thing that could hold him back, despite the fact that this is a guy in limited action, he's already scored 4 collegiate playoff touchdowns. In limited action last year, he only played 130 snaps. So the only thing that's going to hold A.D. Mitchell back is health. Hopefully he had a good strength and conditioning offseason, put on a little bit of muscle that can help act as armor, make him a little bit more durable. I certainly think Texas is going to use him, but I think early in the season, Texas is going to use him judiciously and try to make sure that they don't put too much of a burden or a load on any one receiver so they can have these guys play for what they hope will be a 15-game season. Next, we have Isaiah Nayor. He was last year's A.D. Mitchell. People have already forgotten poor Isaiah. He came in from Texas just like A.D. Mitchell. He was a unheralded high school recruit who grew when he went up to Laramie, and he became the focal point of their offense. In his last year at Wyoming, he caught 44 balls for 878 yards and 12 touchdowns. He was responsible for 42% of their passing offense, which is just basically an unheard of statistic. Of course, he transfers to Texas. He is showing out in summer workouts, and unfortunately, he blows out his knee. He is apparently back. He's healthy. He's up to 6'3.5", about 215 pounds. He is a big receiver, a big X receiver, and a nice compliment to A.D. Mitchell. There's no reason you can't play both of these guys at the same time. Of course, you can also alternate them if you want to really wear out that poor outside corner for the opposing defense. If Isaiah Nayor stays healthy, and all indications are he's a full go in practice, the Texas Longhorn receiving core is going to be elite. And then finally, We have a guy who finally caught a break last year. That's Jordan Whittington. He caught 50 balls, played the whole season after having multiple stop and starts of getting injured and the frustration of sticking it through. You'll notice that it is Jordan Whittington, not some other superstars on this offense, who graces the cover of the 2023 Longhorn football prospectus, Thinking Texas Football. And the reason is it's about resilience, it's about persistence, it's about being a team guy who keeps rising up to the challenge. And that's what this team should embody. That's Jordan Whittington. The other nice bonus of Jordan Whittington is, despite playing slot receiver, he's a bodied up guy and he is an elite blocker. There are multiple highlights of Jordan Whittington putting opposing nickels or corners or safeties on their back and then telling them about it as the receiver or the running back runs by them for a touchdown. Jordan Whittington is a huge asset, and it's kind of remarkable to consider that as good as he is, he might be the 5th best pass catching option on this offense. And that's a pretty remarkable statement for the options that Quinn Ewers is going to have to throw to in 2023.
Absolutely. And then we have what I call the challengers. I have Casey Kane, who made strides versus Washington, and then the exciting young freshmen and Cook, Moore, and Niblett. So how can these guys contribute to the offense, most of whom are in their first season?
Well, Casey Kane was a lightly recruited prospect from Louisiana. He's long-limbed. He's got a long stride. He's got some good natural ability, and he's a guy who's a developmental guy. Frankly, he is a receiver who's going to get a little bit better every year. And gradually, I think Texas will get a pretty good product in Casey Kane. The problem Kane may face is that there's so many talented people around him that I think he's going to be probably a primary reserve option. I think he's a guy they're going to work into the rotation, but he's not going to get a lot of attention. He did finish strong last year. He had 100 plus yards receiving against Washington in the Alamo Bowl. He does, as I said, have some natural ability. I just think the problem for poor Casey Kane is that the level of talent around him is NFL level. And so he's going to have to accept a more subordinate role and really go out there and try to be a good workman-like player when his number is called. Complementing Casey Kane is going to be an influx of very talented incoming freshmen. And the three of them are kind of interesting because they each kind of represent a different kind of contrast. Jonte Cook is a remarkable skill set, not in terms of height or weight or blazing fast. You know, he's got good size. He runs perfectly well. His superpower is stop start and his ability to accelerate and decelerate. And that is an underappreciated, underreported aspect of great wide receiver play. And that's what Jonte Cook has. That's what he embodies. A lot of people compare him in that regard to Xavier Worthy. The difference is that Jonte is a little bit bigger, a little stronger in his body, and also at this stage, maybe a little more sophisticated as a route runner. Jonte Cook is headed to a very bright future at Texas. Steve Sarkisian is going to make sure that he integrates him and plays him some this year. Then you've got DeAndre Moore. I kind of feel like DeAndre has been overlooked a little bit in this group of freshman receivers. All he does is understand the playbook, run the right route, and he's very smooth. He's actually much faster than people think. And this is something that Texas coaches and Texas players have commented on. He is a late bloomer in that sense. Even though he's a four-star recruit, no one really identified speed as a primary asset. They always looked at his route running, his hands, his sophistication. I think he's actually starting to really show that he's going to be a little bit more than just a reliable, smooth pass catcher. I think he's got some top-end speed that's going to surprise people. He is absolutely going to play, and you're going to see him play early and often as part of this rotation, spelling the elite four guys in front. And then finally, you have Ryan Niblett. Niblett is an interesting player because he's all about horsepower. We talked about Jonte Cook and his ability to accelerate and decelerate, stop, start. Ryan Niblett's all RPMs and horsepower. He's a 10, 400 meters guy. He's a 21, 200 meters guy. And every bit of that translates to the football field. He's actually a pretty strong guy as well. After another year of strength and conditioning, I think he'll play at 190, 195. He's not as sophisticated as Moore or Cook, but as he learns to play the position, the coaches are going to find plenty of opportunity to use that horsepower and unleash him on Big 12 defenses and, of course, SEC defenses.
If this group can maximize, it's going to be crazy. And then we have the tight end room with JT Sanders as your for sure number one and Gunnar Helm at number two, often playing on the field at the same time. So what's your thought on these two in the Texas offense, as well as the remaining tight ends on the depth chart?
Last year, the University of Texas spent 35% of their offensive snaps in two tight end sets. In fact, that was their predominant set. Some of that was a function of the fact that they had JT Sanders, who was the most talented athlete at the position since Jermichael Finley in 2007. The other part of it is, frankly, more practical. Steve Sarkisian certainly likes the 12 tight end set, and he likes that personnel group and some of the coverages that he knows it demands. But a lot of it had to do with a lack of receivers. Frankly, the Texas tight end 2 was better than wide receiver 3. That's no longer the case. And then, of course, when you have two tight ends, you simplify blocking schemes for your young offensive line. And you also give a little bit more of a protection and a little bit more of a security blanket to effectively what was a true freshman quarterback. Those things have changed as well. Texas will still continue to use 12 tight end personnel. However, you're going to see a lot more 11, and you're going to see this personnel grouping probably become the second or third most predominant personnel group at Texas. We got to talk about JT Sanders. If it wasn't for the guy at Georgia, the absolute freak, we'd probably be talking about him for the Mackey Award. But nonetheless, he caught 54 balls last year for 613 yards, 5 touchdowns. I think we're also going to see JT Sanders continue to level up as a blocker. Last year, he was a very capable blocker, not dominant, but he was capable as a move blocker, as sort of a traditional H-back, or as they call the sniffer nowadays, or also lining up with his hand down or split out and cracking down on a cornerback or a safety. I think JT Sanders will continue to progress there. I think his bona fides as a pass catcher are well established. However, because of all of the incredible embarrassment of talent that they have at wide receiver and, of course, at running back as pass catchers, I think you're going to see JT Sanders actually catch a few less balls, but probably more effective balls. And you might actually see him catch more touchdowns. So JT Sanders may see a little bit of a tick down in volume production, but you may see him actually tick up in effectiveness. The companion to JT Sanders is Gunnar Helm. He's tight end 2. He's a big, tall kid from Cherry Creek, Colorado, 6'5", 250, and he was capable last year. I think he's a more than capable pass catcher. He only caught 5 balls for 44 yards last year. And given all the talent around him, I don't think you're going to see him suddenly emerge as a 25 or 30 catch guy. But he's out there to do his role. He's out there to be an extra blocking surface, create a different personnel scheme for the defense to adjust to, and really just act as a capable backup for JT Sanders. Gunnar Helm is going to deliver in that regard. And I think he's a player that's going to continue to level up throughout his Longhorn career. Then you have another group of tight ends. One of them is Juan Davis. Juan is a very good athlete. And if you listen to the inside scoop from Longhorn players and coaches, they actually think he's quite talented and gifted. He struggled a little bit to put on weight. He's still about 220, 225 pounds. So he's really not going to be that effective as a blocker if you ask him to lead on a linebacker or even take on a defensive end. And also, he doesn't always seem to understand the structure of the offense. So until that changes, he's a guy that can only play in situational roles. You also have some incoming freshmen. Spencer Shannon from Mater Dei, part of a very important pipeline that Steve Sarkisian is trying to open up in Southern California. Spencer is a traditional sort of blocking tight end with some pass catching ability. He has continued to grow since his senior year of high school. Apparently, he's all of 6'8" right now, and he'll probably top out in his college career in the 250s or 260s and still maintain his athleticism. Obviously, he's a freshman. You may see him a little bit, but I think Spencer Shannon's best football is well ahead of him. And then you have Will Randall. He played with Arch Manning at Isidore Newman. He's got flypaper hands. He was Arch's #1 pass catcher. He did blow out his knee, so he's still recovering. I think they're going to redshirt him, and they're going to put him on a more traditional developmental trajectory. But I think he does have a future as sort of a nifty, football smart, pass-catching tight end. I think he's going to integrate to the offense well within that role. And then finally, you have a walk-on. Patrick Bayout played a few snaps in the spring game as sort of a blocking tight end. He's a former defensive lineman. He's 6'4", 280. I don't expect him to get a ton of snaps, but you might see him on goal line. You might see him when we go to 3 tight end sets. Just a name and a number to watch in the future as you enjoy the 2023 Longhorn football season.
And now we have arrived at offensive line, the group that allows all these weapons to actually activate. And we do return all 5 starters, but that doesn't mean there isn't competition and one of these guys won't get beat out. First, let's talk about 2 sure things in Kelvin Banks and Christian Jones at tackle. How are you feeling about this duo going into the season?
The duo of Kelvin Banks and Christian Jones represent the best pair of tackles in the Big 12 by a mile. And they're actually an interesting contrast in player development. Kelvin Banks, instant phenom from the very beginning. Christian Jones, we put him in the broiler. It was a slow cook. The meal didn't taste great at times, and now it's pretty tasty. First, let's talk about Kelvin Banks. He started as a true freshman at left tackle at a major college football program. Let that sink in for a while, folks, because that doesn't happen very often. And it certainly hasn't happened very often at the University of Texas, particularly with the level of play that Kelvin Banks performed at. He was a freshman All-American. He was second team All Big 12. He should have been first team All Big 12. Oh, well, sports writer's going to sports write. But he faced 3 first-round NFL draft picks last year as a true freshman. That was Will Anderson, Will McDonald, and of course, Felix Anaduke Azumoa. None of those 3 recorded a sack, and they logged all of 2 total pressures. There is no tackle in the Big 12 who handled those 3 players or players equivalent. There might not be 3 players that a tackle's faced in the nation as good as those 3, and Kelvin Banks acquitted himself beautifully. He was ranked 6th in all of the FBS in pass protection. Now, as a true freshman, he still has room for improvement as a run blocker, which you'd expect. He still needs to gain strength in the weight room. That doesn't mean he was a bad or even deficient run blocker. It just means that he's still got upside there. Kelvin Banks is an NFL player. He's probably a first-round draft pick, and he is going to be an absolute stalwart at left tackle and one of the major reasons that the Texas offense levels up in 2023. Let's talk about Christian Jones. Christian Jones has now had 35 starts as a Longhorn, and he admittedly had some rocky times. Over 1,411 total snaps as a sophomore and junior, playing both right tackle and left tackle. Jones gave up 34 hurries, 7 quarterback hits, and 9 sacks. Not necessarily great. In 2022, he played a career-high 811 snaps, only 9 hurries, no quarterback hits, and only 3 sacks. That is a substantial improvement. And I don't think he's done improving just because he's a 6-year senior. I think this is going to be his last and best year at the University of Texas. And I can tell you, Christian Jones has the ability to be a devastating run blocker. Other than Jordan Whittington, there was probably no better highlight reel of blocks than Christian Jones last year. And in fact, the famous Roshan Johnson hurdle jump at Baylor, well, that may not have been the most impressive play on that particular sequence, because if you watch, Christian Jones gets a hold of a Baylor edge and drives him back 15 yards almost into the end zone. Christian Jones is going to be a very capable player for the University of Texas. Texas has no worries at the tackle positions.
Crazy how things can change in a year. And then we have the 3 interior starters where we did have issues this past season, so these guys will get pushed. Majors at center, Hudson at right guard, and Connor at left guard. Where do you think these guys are at as of right now?
If there's a clear question mark on the Texas offense, it's probably the interior offensive line. And we're going to see some improvement there. Whether that's a function of the 3 starters who are returning, all leveling up and improving as you'd expect, or whether some competition introduces some new blood. Let's talk about the guy who's most likely to retain his starting job, and that's Jake Majors. He's had 27 starts as a Longhorn. He's very good at coordinating line calls. He's also a plus pass blocker. He's one of the most effective pass blockers in the Big 12 at the center position. And yeah, the center admittedly often does get help in pass protection, but giving up interior pressure to big defensive linemen is a big no-no in any offense. And Jake Majors does a good job there. The issue with Majors, if there is one, is that there's a 23-point delta between his grade as a pass protector and as a run blocker per Pro Football Focus. He has got to narrow that gap if Texas is going to fully maximize as an interior run offense. The interesting thing about Majors is he is athletic and coordinated enough that when he's uncovered, Texas can actually pull him, and he's actually been pretty good at that. The issue he does have sometimes is when he's facing a big physical nose tackle. He just has issues getting traction and getting movement in the middle without help or a double team. If Majors can improve as a run blocker, it will go a major way to improving the interior offensive line. He's also flanked by 2 players who should considerably improve. The first is Hayden Connor. Because of the name familiarity, I think Longhorn fans almost think of him as some savvy 5th-year veteran. The fact is, last year, he was his first year starting as a true sophomore. He didn't even get the benefit of a red shirt. And in healthier programs, you typically wouldn't see Hayden Conner on the field until 2024. This will be his second year as a starter, and he does need to improve. He's a big player. He's physical. He wasn't super agile at times, and you could see that he didn't always stay on blocks. He also was a little bit of a penalty magnet. He drew more than a few holding calls, and he also had a weird spate of offsides calls that seemed to plague him, several in one game. I think that's all stuff that gets cleaned up with experience. The question is, did an offseason of strength and conditioning and another year of growing his skill base level him up as a guard? If it didn't, well, there might be someone who has a chance to put him on the bench or at least be a part of a rotation. At the other guard position, you got Cole Hudson. Cole Hudson was brought in and pressed into starting duty as a true freshman. Now, a lot of people point to Kelvin Banks and say, well, why can't you be like him? Well, that's a little bit like pointing to Led Zeppelin if you're a cover band in Des Moines, Iowa, and saying, why can't you be like them? Led Zeppelin's not real common, and Kelvin Banks ain't real common. In fact, Cole Hudson showed the growing pains that you'd expect of a young, capable, true freshman offensive lineman. He's not supposed to be playing, and he did his best. The other thing that you really have to like about Cole Hudson is fairly early in the year, he tore his labrum in his shoulder. It's a very painful injury, and he just played through it. And he decided he didn't want to opt out, and he decided to get his surgery at the end of the season. You've got to admire that, and I think Cole Hudson certainly has the grit for the position. The question is, does he have the physical development? Has he grown his skill base in year two? If the answer is yes, he'll start. If the answer is some, but not as much as the guys he's competing with, then we may see new blood and fresh faces at that position.
Let's talk about those guys who can push for playing time, specifically at interior, but we do have a tackle in Cam Williams that'll get some reps. So let's hit him, and then let's go into the real battles at the guard spots. How are you seeing those main competitions as camp begins? And then let's hit the remaining guys who are more in a depth spot right now, and also the incoming freshmen.
Big Cam Williams from Duncanville is a noticeably big human in a group of very big humans. Cam Williams has size that the roster height and weight don't even fully communicate. And he's every bit of 6'5", 360 pounds, and he looks even bigger than that. Cam Williams is someone that Texas fans need to be very excited about. He is a massive guy with a surprising level of athleticism, given his strength, his power. He's got incredibly heavy hands. If he gets his hands on you, the snap is over. You might as well just hang out and wait for the next snap and try it again. Of course, Cam is young. He needs to learn his craft at tackle. That can be very tricky. Not everyone is Kelvin Banks. That's why he's a rarity and a surefire NFL first-round draft pick. On the downside, Cam is a little stiff. So that's something from a strength and conditioning perspective that he's going to work on. That's not to be unexpected from a guy that gigantic. And that's something that'll come in time. He'll get a little bit more fluid in his hips and marry up some of his power to his feet. Once that hits, Cam Williams is going to be a hard player to move out of a starting position. However, right now, the people that are projecting him to start over Christian Jones, a guy with 35 career starts under his belt, who has shown immense improvement on his own, I think Cam Williams is going to be the number 3 swing tackle. And I think that's a great place for him to grow and develop his craft and set him up for 2024. Then we move on to the interior. And this is where some of the real true battles are happening. DJ Campbell. You got to start off with this guy. He was the number 1 interior rated offensive line prospect. And he came in last year. He did get some snaps as a true freshman, and he looked like a true freshman. He didn't always know exactly what he was doing, but you could certainly see the strength, the power, the frame. He wasn't even fully in shape as well. This offseason has been very good for him. And a lot of people who are Longhorn insiders have seen DJ Campbell, and they've done a little bit of a double take saying, who the heck is that guy? And I think DJ Campbell is going to announce his presence. He's going to be competing with both Hayden Conner and Cole Hudson at guard. That's going to be a lively competition. Look, here's the bottom line. DJ Campbell has physical ability and traits that are incredibly rare. And Kyle Flood badly wants to get him on the field. The question is, can he handle the mental game? Can he get assignment sound? Because interior pressure is the worst kind of pressure. You cannot give free runs to interior rushers. You can't give free runs on your quarterback to dudes who weigh 325 pounds. If DJ Campbell can check out in that regard, you've got a guy who's going to be a potential franchise player at guard. I think you're going to see a little bit of an integration and rotation early in the season where they play several guys. And then I think you'll see the starting guards come to the fore by probably OU or even the Kansas game. Next, let's talk a little bit about Neto Umeozulu. He is a guy who seems to be getting overshadowed a little bit by DJ Campbell and some of these other names. Be careful about that because Neto has serious ability. He's a redshirt freshman from Allen, and there's a lot of meat left on his developmental bone. What the coaches love about Neto is that he's got a little bit of a mean streak, a little bit of a nasty streak, which you need on that interior. And also he has just terrific athletic ability. So again, you have to be realistic about offensive line developmental timeframes and can't expect too much too early. But this is a very lively competition at guard. And Neto is a part of that competition. Don't discount him. Next, we go to Malik Agbo. Malik is gifted physically. It's all there in terms of traits, height, weight, his ability to move his feet. I think what the coaches want to see from him is a little bit more of a mean streak, a little bit more of a commitment to finishing blocks. Right now, he is projected as a tackle. I think he needs a little bit more time in the broiler before he becomes a complete meal. But he is a guy and a name to know and to watch. Along in that vein is Connor Robertson. The coaches really like what he's done when he's not been injured. They like what he's been doing at center. He is probably the center of the future for Texas. And he's a player that you need to know and be familiar with. I think his fall camp will be interesting. I don't think he's going to beat out Jake Majors, but I think it will be interesting to see just how much he has improved and gotten more comfort. And if the coaches feel comfortable playing him 150, 200 snaps as a little bit of a rotation and seasoning throughout the season. Next, you have Sawyer Gorham-Welch, the fourth-year junior. He's still adjusting from his move from a packed defensive line room to center or guard. We'll see about him. The good news for Sawyer Gorham-Welch is that typically you can be a lesser athletic defensive lineman and be one of the more athletic offensive linemen. And so that translation has worked out many times in the history of football. We'll see what the future has in store for Mr. Gorham-Welch. But for now, I think he's probably on the outside looking in terms of competing for a starting job. Similar to that, you have Max Merrill. He just needs to add some strength and weight in the weight room. I think it's probably not to his benefit that Texas has been signing consecutive huge offensive line classes with huge talent. And I think he is also on the outside looking in terms of becoming a starter. And then finally, you have all these incoming freshmen. Jaden Chapman is a very talented guy. And in fact, the coaches were very pleased with how he came in and how he looked. And in terms of his dedication to his craft, I think he's a guy you're going to hear from down the road. Trevor Gooseby is going to be a longer-term project. Apparently, he has completely remade his body in one short season of strength and conditioning. If you've already seen those kind of results under the weight bar in this short a time, very interesting what this guy's going to look like as a redshirt junior. Then you got Peyton Kirkland. He is in a strong competition with Cam Williams for the giant human competition. Peyton has got good feet, and he's got a lot of growth still in front of him. Not on the scale, we hope, but in terms of the mental game of football, I think he's a guy that you put in the hopper and you pay attention to. I think he's going to do some good things for Texas down the road. Connor Stroh, speaking of big humans, arguably the biggest of the big humans that come in on this freshman group. Connor Stroh is a guy who just needs some time to remake his body, rework, and learn some of the technical craft. And then finally, Andre Kojo. I believe he might have just turned 18 years old. He is probably the leanest of the big humans that Texas brought in. But because he's so young, I think Kyle Flood sees the ability for him to be 315 with very little issue. And I think he'll carry it well. So he is a player to watch, but he's not a Kelvin Banks. He's still got growth for both physically and mentally and in terms of his skill set. Don't get too optimistic about trying to throw these true freshmen into the fire. A sure sign of a healthy program and a healthy Texas down the road in the SEC is that these young freshmen won't actually see the field until their third or fourth year. Hang on and start to subscribe to the idea of what real offensive line development looks like.
We aren't used to how normal offensive lines function around here. All right, so tying it up in a nice bow, what's the bird's eye view of the upcoming Texas offense?
Well, in summary, you probably guessed that I'm pretty optimistic about the Texas Longhorn offense in 2023. At quarterback, at wide receiver, at offensive line, at running back. Now, the two questions are running back and the interior offensive line. However, those are questions with answers. And sometimes when we do these previews, Homer, we ask questions where there are no answers, and we just do a lot of obfuscating and, well, what if this happens? No, there's pretty clear answers that can address the issues at those positions, and those issues are relative. What we mean is that the interior offensive line is not as established as the two tackles. What we mean is the running backs are not as established as what's going to be an elite wide receiver group. And of course, we think Quinn Ewers is going to level up, pushed by a much improved, very enticing Malik Murphy. Arch Manning is the future. You got Charles Wright. And, right now, I think this Texas offense looks very healthy. They're going to be the best offense in the Big 12. The question is, are they going to be one of the best offenses in the country?
That'll get them fired up, Paul. Great stuff as usual. And of course, we're meeting up for a part 2 to talk defense and special teams. But for now, please tell the viewers where they can find your weekly writings and, of course, pick up the latest edition of the book.
First of all, you can find me at Inside Texas, the preeminent Texas Longhorn football site on the internet. I think it's the best college football site. Sign up and find out for yourself. If you're as excited about the 2023 season as we are, get this. This is the season companion that you need. It's the Burnt Orange Bible. It's the 11th annual 2023 Longhorn Football Prospectus, Thinking Texas Football. It's a long-winded way of saying this is the most comprehensive Texas football and Big 12 and opponent preview that you will find. 177 pages. You can buy it if you want the print copy. You can buy it at Amazon. It'll be in your hot hands in 24 to 48 hours. If you want to buy it instantly and really get it in your hands, you can go to Apple and buy it for your iPad or your laptop, or you can go to Smashwords. Smashwords is a agnostic publisher. It's an independent publisher, and that download can be read on any device that you have. So if you have a Kindle, just make sure you buy the MOBI version, and you'll be good to go, and you'll be reading what I think is the best Texas Longhorn football preview on the market. Homer, I am fired up about 2023. I'm fired up about this season. I think this is the year that Sark proves his mettle, and all I can say is, hook 'em!
And that's a wrap on Paul Wadlington. Head over to Inside Texas and sign up today. Thanks for hanging out. Watch some more of my videos here. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you want to support quality Texas content. As always, hook 'em!